bolsters. Get enough of those. When it comes to breath work, I like to focus on pelvic floor breathing. Because no matter what type of breath work, choreography you're adding to the body, we want the breath to be moving through the body correctly, right? And so we're going to talk about the different development stages of the breath. When we're born as babies, we mostly breathe into the chest here, right? We're usually breathing through the mouth. We have this open intake valve that's really wide. And then as we start to get older, adolescent age, we start to learn belly breathing, so what I call the adolescent breath. We start to learn to breathe through our nose. We have a smaller intake valve to help regulate the breath better. And bring it a little more deeply into the body. This starts to awaken the diaphragm, helps start mobilizing it. We call this like the hymen of the breath. We want to break it in. And so then we can learn to draw that diaphragm down all the way into the base of the body. And then exhale, moving the breath out. And we get this main pump functioning fully and not functioning halfway and breathing into the belly and kind of stopping it there at the mid-spine. We want to pull that full connection so we can connect these nerve hubs of our spine, the base of the spine to the sacrum, where they have bladder spread here, and then to the top of the spine here. Come on in, everybody. I was just kind of explaining it. I'll go back over some stuff. I just kind of jumped into it. But we're going to have the mats facing this way, as you see everyone sitting. I'm going to give you an orange bolster. I'll grab some blankets. Here, I'll give you this. Yeah. So I was telling everyone, when it comes to breath work, I like to focus on the route of the breath, making sure that our breath is moving through the body fully. Because we can add different choreographies, different kind of breaks and pulses and rhythms to it, but we want to make sure that that pathway is clear. We're breathing that full pathway of the breath. And that's learning the pelvic floor breathing, which I call the mature breath, right? Chest breathing is our infantile breath. Belly breathing is like an adolescent breath. And as our body starts to develop fully and we get down to the finer development areas, we can start to breathe into that pelvic floor, start to gain relationship and intimacy with this area. So that's what we're gonna do, learning how to pull it fully through the body. And when we think about breathing, we're not actually like sucking air in through our nostrils. What's happening is we have this air pressure going on around us. To take a breath in, what we're doing is relaxing our muscles to let our body fill up with air. And when I contract the diaphragm, draw it downward, I'm creating that vacuum space to bolster the chest. As you think about the way that a tree roots down, it roots into the ground and then it moves up through the trunk and then branches out. So we all are born and we start our life in this umbilical spot, right? We're connected, that's where we're connected to our mothers, and our body moves outward like this. Pink inside of our mouth and tongue is the same as the pink area of our genitals, this soft tissue. So these two are connected. It's just one end and the other. So we're learning how to breathe and move the breath in two directions, move our body in two directions to lengthen the spine, not to push the belly forward and kind of shorten the spine. This means we have to taper here. This is creating tension in the body at the base of the spine. When we start to do that, create that tightness in the muscles, energy can't flow easily. Subtle energy can't flow through this. It gets muted. So then we end up with that tightness, and it's pinging our energy back and forth between the toxic feminine, toxic masculine states of anxiety and depression. We're trying to find balance there. When we learn how to soften here and can really ground our energy through our root, then we can find that flow and fusion of these two rather than kind of fighting to hold them together, right? So we're going to take a moment just to kind of tune into breath and tune into the space. We're gonna actually lay on our bellies, and you can bring a blanket down for the face, or place the palms together on top of each other. You can lay your head to the side if you'd like, either side, and just feel your body splay out on the ground. Begin feeling the support of the surface beneath you. Thinking about the expansiveness of the earth. And that larger body of the earth holding and supporting the body. Since the earth rising up to cradle and mold to your form. As you feel your breath blossoming within the body, maybe you feel the earth swelling along with you. And exhale, surrender more deeply into the ground. Inhale, feel that swelling rising through the body, the earth rising up to hold you. Taking a breath with this larger container of the earth. Exhale, breath receding into the ground. Just noticing that pulse of breath flowing through the body, flowing through the ground. And release with some sighs. You can ah, ha, or give some horse breath. And take a deep breath in, all the way down the length of the spine, into the tailbone, spreading across the sacrum. Exhale. Inhale, filling up to the edges of the body. Let the sound and texture move tension from the subtle body. Exhale. Let's do two more. Inhale. Down to the toes, out to the fingertips. One more big one. Inhale. Just feeling the earth pliable and soft, but sturdy and vast beneath you. Rising with your breath, softening with your exhale. Feel the support beneath the feet and the thighs. Let the belly splay across the ground. Let your ribs be held by the earth. And your heart resting on the cushion of your breast. And tuning in to the shoulder blades. And then separate on the inhale. Soften and release on the exhale. The breath gliding beneath the shoulder blades, lubricating shoulders and spine. Feel that lightness of breath rising up the cervical spine, softening the base of the skull. If you have your head turned, you'll be turning the other way, keeping the eyes closed or soft. Let your chest be heavy into the ground. Let your inhale unzip the spine, back body, unfolding to the sky. Just feeling your body connect and merge with the vibrations of the earth. The vibrating particles of the body syncing up with the vibrating particles of the ground. Feeling the relationship with this larger container, energy and matter. These resources have created your mobile body. Feeling that connection to the pulse of the breath, the pulse of life, the pulse of awareness. Deepen the inhale, lengthen your exhale, maybe adding some texture of sound. Bend the knees, soles of the feet up towards the ceiling, windshield wiper the legs side to side. Let the hips be heavy. Your inhale, move into the hips, hip bones separating, softening. Let your legs come back down to the ground. We're gonna press our palms into the earth besides the chest and start to rock our torso side to side, pressing into one hand and then the other. And reaching the right arm up overhead, top of the mat. Bend the left leg and start to guide the sole of the left foot behind you, rolling over to the side. You can bend the knees, rest the head on the arm. Let your side body slug into the ground. Taking a deep breath down to the tip of the tailbone. Soften the soles of the feet. Soften the brow, the jaw. Maybe blink your eyes open, let them close again for a moment. Adjusting to the light, the sounds in the room, the air. Let your top knee collapse on the bottom knee if it hasn't already. Just take a moment to rest. Don't worry about positioning. Let your body surrender to gravity. Surrender to the earth rising to hold and cradle you. Feel the breath lighting up the body to the tips of the toes and the fingertips, wiggling toes and fingers. Move the tongue around within the mouth, roll the eyes behind your lids. And blinking the eyes open, just let your eyes travel around the room, maybe up to the ceiling or across the floor, just slowly. Taking a moment to focus on something and soften your gaze. Let it travel around the room, looking up, down to the sides. And relax the eyes into neutral position. We'll press into the left hand, helping to push ourselves up to seated position. Nice. So has anybody heard of pelvic floor breathing before? Yeah, okay, cool. Has anybody taken my pelvic floor breathing class?
Unsuccessful.
No, you did it. You did it. You made it through. That's all it's about, planting that seed. Because when we're tight in those areas, starting to open that up, we may not feel anything at first, and it's going to take time for that reverberation to kind of get through and soak into all this really tight tissue. For me, when I learned pelvic floor breathing, it was probably like a year after that I got it, and I was like, oh, yeah, like, you know, like I knew, but feeling it in my body, it took my body that time to adjust to it and be like, okay, this is new normal. And like, oh, now I get it. You know what I mean? So you've already started the work, you know. You're just not seeing the benefits you're looking for, but they're there, right? We're just going to take for granted what we don't know. So pelvic floor breathing is learning how to breathe into the pelvic floor, bringing that breath all the way down. Our pelvic floor within the body is in our pelvic girdle in the hips here at the base of the body. This is a female diagram model. But the pelvic floor is this network of muscles that are woven together to create like a secondary diaphragm. Different is this diaphragm is one smooth muscle. Down there is a bunch of muscles woven together. It has openings for our urethra, vaginal canal, and anus, right? And these are sphincters of the body. In yoga, we would call that a bandha. Has anybody heard of bandhas in yoga? Bandha means lock. And so the sphincters of our body, we have them at the base of the body, Muladhara Bandha, or Mula Bandha, you might have heard it as. And then we have Uddiyana Bandha, so we've brought our diaphragm, right? If somebody's like gonna punch you in the belly, you like contract your gut. Or I think of a breath of fire, right? Feeling that pulse of this muscle here. And then we have Jaladhara Bandha, which is, we'll use that in Ujjayi, where we're tightening that, constricting that intake valve just to make it a little bit smaller so we can regulate the breath better coming in, move heat out of the body more efficiently. And so these valves help to regulate the pace and the pressure of breath and fluid within our fluid body systems, right? So we want to learn how to use them at like they need to become agile and articulate, right? So that we can be more in control of our body. When we're not breathing into the pelvic floor and we're doing belly breathing, we're actually moving everything forward. And what I'm displacing here is muscle, tissue, my organs, right? All of this moving forward. And in order to displace that, something has to compensate, right, for this to move forward. Because I'm breathing in, this isn't air going in here. Unless I have a punctured lung, air is only going into my lung sacs, right? This isn't air filling up my belly. This is my organs moving forward. So if I'm just moving my organs forward and back and forward and back, they're not getting much compression and cleansing. What I want to do is inhale, move them down, kind of siphon the belly so I can move the organs down, press them into the pelvic bowl to get that tone. As I exhale, I engage the pelvic floor. We're creating what you might have heard as a Kegel moving up the body. And that starts to compress the organs, not only the organs, but the vagus nerve that runs and connects to our digestive system. It's compressing and cleansing that, and then inhale it, they're flourishing and filling up with breath and oxygen, blood and oxygen again, right? Instead of waddling them back and forth, they're not getting any compression or exercise from that. On the inhale, I can stretch that vagus nerve, and exercise it, exhale, compress it, and keep those systems clean, right? But with belly breathing, all I'm doing is moving it forward, and when I move it forward, it's actually lifting up on my pelvic floor, contracting my pelvic floor, tightening it on my inhale. And also if I'm inhaling and that area is tight, it's not getting that oxygen and that circulation. What I want to do is spread the surface area so that it can receive that, right? But if it's closed off, it's closing itself off to receiving that. So that's the, I really am determined to teach this to people just because I see y'all working so hard in yoga classes, right? But if we're doing the breath incorrectly, we're actually exacerbating the issue more quickly. The harder you work, the more you're creating that. And over time, we can approach things like that and our body will finally give out and break, right? And then we have to deal with it. I want people to kind of avoid that. Let's not push our bodies, and that's kind of like porn style is what I call it, just bang until it finally has to explode. We want to feel into it and experience and have that control and harness that energy, right? Instead of just giving it away or wasting it, or putting ourselves into more tightness. So that's what we're going to learn how to do. Do we have any questions so far? I know I'm kind of jumping. It's been a while since I've taught this in a big class, so I'm trying to address things.
You said the bandha for the throat chakra was what?
Jaladhara Bandha.
And then what was the ujjayi?
So Ujjayi breath, good question.
Yeah.
Ujjayi breath is engaging Jaladhara Bandha. So Jaladhara Bandha is like this. If I want to engage it and constrict it to create Ujjayi breath, which is that ocean breath or Darth Vader breath, sounds like, right? then I'm closing up my esophagus just a bit. I'm tightening the muscles around that to constrict it. And I'm using that on the inhale to pull it down. And with pelvic floor breathing, we kind of do that. Sometimes I say engage 20% or 50%. You kind of will start to learn your range when you start to work into these muscles and gain that relationship with them. So so what we're learning to do is do that with our Muladhara Bandha, right? And maybe these aren't as precise a experiences as you'd like, but might as well start working them all together, right? That's what we want to do, is have that control over our body, have that maturity and authority over our body. Does that answer the question? Okay, cool. So let's get into feeling it. What I like to do at first is kind of massage the muscles around here. Start to bring our attention and focus in this area. Because when areas get tight, we kind of dissociate from them. And when we're numb in an area, I ask you to feel into it. You're like, I don't know, I'm numb in that area. How do I feel into some place that I'm numb to, right? So we're gonna bring some proprioception into that, and a little bit of pressure just to feel into it. So we're gonna take our blankets and unfold it once into this longer rectangle, mid-rectangle, I'll call it, and start to roll up the blankets. So basically creating like a replacement for a foam roller. The difference with a foam roller, they're a little bit too firm, I find, for this more sensitive area. So these muscles are attached to this opening here between the sits bones, the pubic bone, and the tailbone. So the pelvic floor consists of all this muscle that connect these attachments here. But it's affected by all of the tension that we have, and these larger muscles feed this area. So they hold a lot of tension. So we want to be delicate and have something a little more pliable and forgiving, like a blanket, to work into this. The sits bones, however, are a little bit of a different story. So we'll start on the floor with those. Sits bones where our glutes attach. So all that tightness in our glutes. If we find ourselves, an anal retentive, or when you get in a stress situation, you feel yourself kind of holding and tightening. That's kind of what we want to get rid of. All of that kind of plays into the pelvic floor. So we're going to sit into our glutes. Just feel that weight of the body. You put your hands to the side, kind of rock the body side to side. Relax the toes and the legs. So we're just letting the weight of the body assist in massaging the muscle over the sits bones, trying to release those attachments. You start to go in circles. And breathe into that sensation. Breathe into that space. Let your breath assist in expansion and release. I like pulsing the toes back and forth. This is one I do often. It's kind of, you may hear like or feel that kind of grittiness of the muscle. That's all that tension and fascia buildup. We're trying to loosen that up. So the base of the body, kind of where everything roots from, right? Everything comes from this tightness here. This informs the rest of the tone of the body. And the way we walk, how the ground impacts our feet, all of that comes up, sends information and tension into this area, which then feeds all these tension lines. If you feel the muscle tendons in the neck, under the collarbone here, this is a lot similar to what it feels like in the pelvic floor, because these are mirroring each other. It's just that this one's inverted and this one comes out. Well, for males, it also extends outward, but the idea of the pelvic floor inside feels like this, but in there. And so these tension lines, kind of like a marionette doll, if they're really tight, right, and holding the body, we can't collapse and relax. And so that's what we're trying to do, just loosen those things so we have that control of range and the option to relax if we want to. We're all pretty good at being in tension. So let's practice the other way. Great. You even come onto the hip bones here, roll it out. And breathing into it. Feel the hips splaying out. It's almost if you had a balloon between the hip bones and you're blowing that balloon up. Let the buttocks flare and soften. And exhale, imagine you could deflate that balloon. Kind of playing with that idea. I would use the pelvic floor to deflate the balloon between your hips. And inhale, going back up. Roll to the other hip. And exhale, squeezing that balloon. On the exhale, moving the air up and out of the body. Alright, cool. We're just going to do a simple one here. Placing the blanket here. And bringing the sits bones. I like to put it to where My sits bones are just behind the curve, the peak of it, so that the peak line is kind of hitting where my glutes and my hamstrings attach. And that's a good spot just to kind of wiggle into, notice the tension, maybe soften and let your body sag and feel that heaviness. If you feel any sensation, breathe into that. Maybe it's subtle. Just letting the body be heavy. I kind of stretch through my heels, pull my heels forward, and start to pull my body forward. But the idea is I want to kind of keep the muscle and the skin attached to the roll, but try to glide the bones over the peak. So I'm creating traction under the glutes, at the back of the thighs. Ooh. You feel it kind of pulling and stretching that muscle, and let your body kind of come more towards this side of the roll. And feel that traction in the base. Everybody feeling that a bit? And again, using that idea of blowing up that balloon between the hips, breathe into that tension. Try to spread sensation, soften that area. And as you're doing that, notice if you're gripping in the toes, the jaw, or the shoulders. A lot of times that tension will try to get stuck somewhere else and like hide there until we aren't paying attention and rush back into the spot when we're done. So letting that energy and charge, really what tension is electrical charge stored and overwhelming the body. And let that charge and vibration flow through the soft, subtle tissues of the body. So noticing your edges, if you're trying to cling on to that charge, let it go. Exhale, maybe creating that Kegel effect and squeezing the pelvic floor. Squeezing the transverse abdominals. Noticing the sensation that creates against the roll, maybe around the sits bones, the anus. Inhale, let it go, so you can spread across the roll. And exhale, contract and gather. Just wiggling a little side to side. So I'm gonna have you all kind of work into this. If you're still feeling sensation here, you work into that. You can try bending the knees, see if that creates anything. Just moving side to side, and we're looking for just an area of tension. I got one right here, and I'm just gonna sit into it, and then relax my body. Do that kind of body check, body scan. Am I holding in my ears, my brow, down my neck and shoulders, torso, legs, toes, fingers, all that jazz. Wiggle the toes. And take that breath into the spot, spread into that sensation. So working on that, work into that area, whichever areas you find. You're ready to move into another area, maybe searching for another. I'm going to show y'all in my body the difference of what pelvic floor breathing looks like compared to belly breathing. Just give you an idea how it might move through the body. People learn differently, a little more visual way. So belly breathing, my belly's going to come out and exhale, compress the belly button back, right? So it's kind of going on basic cues you hear in class. Inhale into the belly, exhale, belly to spine, right? It's typically what we hear, and so that's kind of what that looks like. In pelvic floor breathing, you're going to see the belly contract, but I'm also engaging the pelvic floor. The difference is that if I'm just pushing the belly back, to spine, then I'm actually pushing my organs down on my exhale, right? And so that's setting me up for things like prolapse, incontinence, hemorrhoids, hernias, all that kind of stuff. We want to create that engagement in the pelvic floor when we're exhaling instead of trying to squeeze, throwing everything out the body. So belly breathing looks like this. Inhale, belly forward, exhale back. Notice my belly, notice my shoulders. Now I'm going to do pelvic floor breathing, where instead of thinking of filling up the body like a balloon, I'm going to think of an hourglass shape. I want to lengthen through the spine to siphon that breath down and bolster the chest outward. So belly breath, it's like that. Pelvic floor breathing. It's like this. Seeing the difference in my shoulders, you can see my chest spreading, right? Because if I'm belly breathing and creating that effect, if I'm displacing that, I have to lift up here, but I also have to kind of taper here. So I'm actually closing off my lungs, and all I'm really getting access to is the bottom of my lungs when I'm belly breathing. So if I inhale and lengthen through here, I can bolster and spread like those branches of the tree, right? So that's how it looks there. I'm going to show you from the side. You can notice from the side, even my tailbone as I do the belly breathing, just kind of stays neutral, and I pelvic floor breathe. You can see it kind of reaching downward. My spine lengthening as I fill up these to the base of the spine and the top of the spine, tractioning my spine with these, pillows of air, balloons. So let's get into how can we feel that. We're going to use the roll, the proprioceptive tool again to feel into that. Unroll it a bit. We want to kind of go maybe like fist size. We're going to have it this way between the sits bones. I like my legs out. But this is something you can do, sitting in a chair, as long as the surface is firm and it's not pushing the roll into the ground. So what we're doing here, between the sits bones, we don't want the noise to be too loud, or the sensation to be too loud, but some connection to the roll at the base of the floor. So between the sits bones, the pelvic floor doesn't sit flush against the ground. It has this kind of arc between the sits bones. So all we're doing is using this roll to lift the surface to the pelvic floor. So that when we inhale, we can feel our pelvic floor maybe spreading across that roll. Right, that's the idea. And as we exhale, I want to kind of create that traction and engagement of the pelvic floor, zipping up through the front of the body, doing that Kegel effect, almost as if they're trying to lift the roll off the ground. And then we inhale and spread. And exhale, lift and gather. So we can have that idea of imagining that balloon between the hip bones inflating, and the chest spreading. And exhale, deflating that balloon between the hip bones, lifting and gathering the breath and the organs up and out of the ribs. Inhale, releasing down. Exhale, lift and gather. For males, you can think breathe into the balls. As you exhale, use the muscles. If I told you to lift your balls, use those muscles. Pull up. Inhale, drop and release. Exhale, lift. For women, I like the visualization of a flower bud close. As you inhale, the petals spread. So the vaginal canal is this flower spreading its petals. Exhale, the petals are softly closing. And that idea of softness, just so we can be present in each moment of movement and how it unfolds and gathers. You can also think of the pelvic floor like the palm of the hand. I like to think of inhaling, spreading the palm of the pelvic floor across the roll. Exhale, lift and gather, curling the fingers of the pelvic floor around that roll as if you could lift it off the ground. Inhale and spread the fingers in the palm. Exhale, lift and gather, zipping up through the front of the body as if you were putting on a wetsuit. Move the breath all the way out, compressing through the chest. Inhale, release, thinking about the tree spreading its roots into the ground as you spread the breath into the ground, rising up through the trunk of the body, expressing through the branches, through the shoulders, the chest, and the neck. Exhale, collecting those roots, moving that energy, diffusing it through the body, through the spine, out the top of the head. Inhale, breathing into the earth, spreading through your roots, rising through the trunk and the core, receiving through the lungs, the branches, the leaves. Exhale, lift and gather that energy of the earth, diffuse it through the body, spread it into your environment. So that inhale, we're contracting the diaphragm to draw it down, create that vacuum space. So the breath can actually start at the base of the body rather than the nostrils. As we soften the base of the body and spread, we draw the diaphragm downward, creating that space to bolster the lungs, to receive the breath as it pours into the body. Exhale, lift and engage the pelvic floor to move that breath up and out. Inhale, release.
Are you squeezing the abs out?
They do tend to contract, and especially if we have a lot of tightness here, you may feel the breath kind of only going there, and as you exhale, you got to use that to the abs to kind of assist in that. Over time, the pelvic floor will become, and that core connection, that core system that it's connected to, become a little more refined, where you don't feel yourself necessarily using the external abs, right? But the internal tube, right, that sends it upward. But to begin, yeah, if you feel like you need to use your buttocks to clench, and kind of assist that as well on the contraction, totally fine. Over time, we want to work on the inner lining of the body, that inner network more, and relaxing the outer. But to start, that's a good place to go, especially if we're tight in there and there's that dissociation. It helps bring that contraction and sensation, so we can start to create relationship and understanding of that tissue.
But ideally, you don't flex over the pelvic floor muscle relaxing, right?
Ideally, it is, you feel the pelvic floor breathe. This development process has stages to it. So you may feel one way, and then when you get to there, you're like, oh, okay, it's a little bit different. Ideally, what we're getting into is there's this inner lining of muscle, this inner network of muscle in the body. Different from the more external mechanic, that helps us move around. This is more subtle body energy, helps us digest and kind of helps our, the more subtle system of our hormones and lymphatic system and all of that. And so learning how to tune into those, when we relied on the exterior muscle system, it's a little bit harder because it's a little louder. So we need to kind of soften and take some time to tune into that. But ideally, it feels like using the inner muscular system to open. My buttocks are relaxed. I'm not, like spreading or kind of pushing into them. And then I exhale, I lift and gather. It's that inner muscle system. You can see my abs actually do start to come into it because they're connected to that from the inside, but I'm not like really doing it, really hard. But in the beginning, yes, play with that extreme of it, exaggerating it so you can start to feel your range, right? You feel your edges. So definitely play with that. Over time, you'll when you start to feel it, you're like, okay, I don't need to. But to start, yeah, I would say use that, whatever you can to help with that. Okay, cool. So that's kind of using the blanket, and this is something, when it comes to pelvic floor breathing, we're reversing how we're taught to breathe pretty much. We're kind of doing it backwards. And so it can take the mind and the body a little while to get on board with, like, no, we're doing it this way now, and we're so used to those muscle memory grooves. I'm going to show you an easy movement that we're going to get up to standing here, and just to help integrate it into the body and into that muscular system, that more outer body muscular system, right? So it's supporting that inner system as well. So there are many exercises we do in the yoga class that I've noticed that are kind of teaching the breath backwards and creating resistance, and that can make the pose harder, which makes it maybe feel like we're doing more, but it's actually, so I'll explain with this one. So one that we do often is goddess squat, where we inhale up and exhale down, right? Inhale, receive the breath, exhale, move everything down and out, right? And if we're breathing backwards, we're belly breathing and lifting up on the pelvic floor, it makes sense to breathe up because everything's going up, right? And then exhale, we're kind of pushing everything down. The problem with that, again, we're creating that issue of prolapse, incontinence, hemorrhoids, hernias, all that stuff. But if I were to do pelvic floor breathing with that pattern, like inhaling up, dropping my pelvic floor, and exhale, tightening my pelvic floor as I'm widening here, I'm setting myself up for injury in a very vulnerable area because I'm creating that resistance. I'm actually going to create more tightness in the area. It's kind of like you have loose, you want to work on your biceps. You create resistance to build that muscle, make it tighter, right? And so we want to avoid that. So we want to work with the physics of the body. And what makes sense is as I'm spreading my legs open to breathe into that space, as I'm creating that space of the pelvic floor to widen. And I exhale, I lift and gather, zip up through the body. Inhale, release, breathe into the earth, widen the toes, breathe down through your roots. Exhale, lift and gather. As we inhale, we can use that buoyancy, that cushion of breath to hold us, right? And soften those joints and connections. Exhale, create that structure, that A-frame, right? Inhale, release. Exhale, zip up. And I also do ballet, We use plies for jumps to save our knees, right? But it also makes sense to inhale, fill up with breath. Use that to propel me off of the ground, right? Rather than becoming heavy, releasing all my breath, and then trying to suck myself up into the air. And we're using that physics to help us move. And it's okay for exercise to be easy, because what are we doing exercise? To train our body to live through life, right? So we want it to move with ease. We're always training it resistance and challenge. That's the pattern it knows, and it's going to create situations to do that. So we want to change the pattern of our nervous system. Inhale, exhale, lift and gather. I have an autoimmune condition, and since I've learned pelvic floor breathing, I haven't had relapses. When I get really stressed, it would trigger it, right? But because my pelvic floor breathing now is self-regulating my nervous system, because my pump is functioning fully, right? Because this dominant pump of the body, if it's not functioning fully, it has a kink in it, all the other pumps in the body are taking its influence from this dominant pump, and they're going to do the same. That leads us into suffering and disease. So inhale, imagining breathing that up. Exhale, lift and gather. So setting our body and training it to breathe correctly is going to self-regulate so many things, our nervous system. We don't have so much to shed off, right? We have more time in life. It's amazing what this has done for me. Exhale, lift and gather. Inhale, release. Oops. Exhale, lift and gather. Started talking and move at the same time. So, is that making sense here, and feeling it into the body, right? So this is a movement you can do to, when you wake up or go to bed, just to start to reset. Changing or correcting this breath takes about 6 to 9 months. But I think of that as a gestation period for a whole new life. You're birthing yourself a whole new life, a whole new body. Exhale, lift and gather. But this we can use, when we wake up, when we go to sleep, we want to just kind of, what does it feel like in the body? Shake it out. Release with some sound. Relax all the seriousness. Shake it out. All right. So that's something we can do before exercise, just to kind of feel, okay, what's it supposed to feel like in the body? How can I apply this to my different exercises? And I noticed for me, it takes about 6 to 9 months, and I would kind of notice myself kind of checking my breath here and there, like, am I breathing backwards? I find myself breathing backwards. Okay, how do I correct it? My body's so used to breathing backwards, trying to do that mentally just was so hard. So I was like, okay, how can I do this proprioceptively? So I'm in the grocery store trying to figure it out, and I'm thinking a goddess squat, and I'm like, okay, that's just a second position plie in ballet. I'll just take it to first position and just bend my knees, right? So inhale, as I bend my knees, I go down, fill up with fuel. Exhale, rock it off the ground. Inhale, widen, fill up that fuel tank. Exhale, use the breath to propel you up. And that kind of helped me set it up, so I wasn't like looking weird in the grocery store. I was just kind of doing this, right? And that helped me reset it in my mind. I could be like, oh, okay, I got it. And then I could kind of work on it in my body. So that's a nice one to do. 44. All right, so let's go ahead and do, so from that one, let's kind of feel into the different sides. Because when we turn it into Warrior 2, we can kind of isolate each side of the pelvic floor, and I'll give you a little bit of idea of relationship to that. So, exhale, create structure. Inhale, open, land on that cloud of breath. Exhale, push into the ground, lift into the pelvic floor, zipping up through the body. Inhale, release. You may feel one side of the pelvic floor maybe blowing up a little bit more. Exhale, lift and gather. Create that, like you're gathering that roll up, zipping up through the wetsuit. Inhale and open. So create that breath, and actually, as I'm breathing in the pelvic floor, it's my breath pushing my bone out of the way, right? Because I'm widening that pelvic floor. And exhale, lift and gather. Inhale, let the breath move the thigh forward. Exhale, lifting through the pelvic floor, bring that thigh in and upward. Inhale, open and land. Exhale, up and create structure. Inhale, ground into the breath, through the feet rooting into the earth. Spread that breath down through the earth. Exhale, spiking it up to the sky. Inhale, and exhale. And we'll turn our toes in and turn the other toes out to the other side. Inhale, down, land on the cloud. spread through the breath, create that land beneath you. Exhale, move it up to the sky. Inhale, unfold your environment like an umbrella. Exhale, closing, zipping up. Inhale, spread and land. Exhale. Inhale, receiving the breath from the earth through the body. Exhale. One more time. Inhale. And exhale. Zip. Nice. Turn toes in. Wiggle the hips side to side. And step feet in. And march it out. Okay. Looking down into a little more restful one. We're gonna work it through the body in a little bit of a different way. This is kind of gonna go with, like, if you like pattern breath, this may be helpful to kind of segment it and break it down. So we're just gonna get comfortable. You can have your bolster here for the knees. I'm just laying on the ground like that. Or you can have your legs flat on the floor if you like. Maybe wiggle the hips side to side. Feel that massage of the sits bones or the tailbone, sacrum area. Let's go ahead and bend the knees, place the feet on the bolster. And we're gonna rock the hips side to side, bringing one knee forward, the other knee, gently rocking across the sacrum. Bring your breath into the sacrum, let it splay out the low back, lubricating the sacrum as it floats within the skin. And gradually let that slow into stillness. Let your legs rest. So here we're just going to break the breath down into the different sections of the body. First section is going to be our hips. We're going to imagine breathing into the hips and the hip bones widening apart, the sits bones traveling apart, creating this spacious basement. Like, just clean out your basement, open all the windows, the breeze is flowing through. This will be section 1, spreading through the hips. Section 2 is going to be guiding that breath up the length of the spine through the belly. So rather than the belly moving forward, it's going to rise up like an elevator through that stalk, the torso. Section 2. Section 3 is the chest. I'm going to breathe into the heart space, widening through the shoulders, just as we did in the hips, letting the shoulder blades release and widen. Filling up the chest with breath on section 3, last part of the breath. And then as we exhale, we're going to move it from section 1, lifting and engaging the pelvic floor, close down the base of the body. Section 2, through the belly, zipping up through the belly, compressing as we knit the belly and the low ribs together. Exhale through the chest, soften the heart, soften the shoulders. Inhale, section 1, through the hips spreading. Section 2, the length of the spine. Section 3, to the heart, spreading through the shoulders. Exhale, section 1, 2, 3. Inhale into the base. Section 2, the belly. To the light of the breath, rise through the spine, to the chest, spreading through the shoulders and the heart. Exhale from the base. 1, 2, belly. Section 3, heart. If you like, you could place a hand on the belly and the chest. As you inhale to the hips, let the belly remain at sea level as you move the breath through the belly and the spine. And feel the chest rise beneath your hands, expand through the branches. Exhale, 1, 2, Contract the diaphragm down to the hips. Spread through the heart. Exhale, lift the diaphragm, hips into the heart. For communication, it's the heart sending the diaphragm down to the base of the body, checking things out, saying hello. Diaphragm moves back up, send that information, deliver any packages. Inhale, visiting the hips, the diaphragm, heart spreads. Exhale, hips, heart. Just continuing hips, heart, applying this pattern to our inhale and exhale. And noticing the belly as you're breathing. The visualization I like to give is think about old television sets where like in a box or bulbous protruded out from that box, rounding out like a belly breath. These days we've upgraded our technology just like we're upgrading our technology here. And we have big, wide, flat screens, right? So let's take that belly, that tube television, that belly breathing, turn it into that flat screen. So flattening, widening the belly on the inhale, expanding through the sides. So you see the breath, spread the chest and the hips. And exhale, lift together.
I love that metaphor, by the way.
Isn't that funny? Yeah. I'm like, oh dang, we're doing it everywhere. We don't even know. Where are we doing that? Yeah, biggest, widest flat screen you can get. Pretty big. This is another breath we kind of tune into. Just very simple things to help train the body. That's what we want to do. Have our body move simply and easy. It doesn't have to be so complicated. When we set up this simple foundation for all these basic elemental parts to function correctly, we can move up and expand a lot more easily when we have such great integrity and cohesion within the systems. So let these things be easy. Let the body learn to carry you, learn to surrender to the joy of experiencing this body instead of feeling like it can make it all happen. So go along for the ride, all the way down to the depths, and clear it all the way out. Hang on to nothing. Take in the next round, the next layer, the next evolution of the experience. I think you enjoyed it the first time. Know that you are held. You're part of the earth learning to breathe itself. And you feel like, oh, I should have learned this before, or why didn't I know this before? Because we have development stages, right? Us as individuals, we have our different development stages of our body as we age and grow. But also humanity as a whole, and the earth itself has its own developmental stages. And typically the base of the body, our sexual organs on that area, is the last to develop and fully in the body, and the growth system. Once we get that growth system working, we can work on the super system, those muscles we can develop on the inner body that I was speaking of. This was us in clairvoyance, clairaudience, telepathy, all these superpowers. But first we gotta fix the external structure, that masculine support that provides that support to the inner feminine, that inner softness. I forget where I was going with that, but went. So we're going to start to use this to move sound out of the bodies. As I mentioned, these inner muscles, these inner systems that we have, they're more soft and sensitive. When our outer shell is tight and hard and rigid and vigilant, we can't, it's too loud. We're living in survival mode. We can't go into that state of heaven and trying too hard to keep the body physically alive. We're not living. And so using sound and texture on the inner body, it's like, a sound bath is a sonic massage. It's massaging these subtle tissues, helping to open these channels. There's, that inner body, we can't really force it out with karate chops and rubbing. We need to soften the inner body, create that space to let us release it. And sound and texture moving through our voice helps us do that in our So I'm a tantric sex educator as well. And one thing I've noticed in sex is that people tend to hold their breath. And I was like, okay, where's this coming from? And I think it comes from our stages of puberty as children. We start to explore our body, explore pleasure. Hopefully we don't live at home alone, right? We don't have a lot of privacy, but hopefully we're not like 11 or 12 living out on the streets by ourselves. So we don't have a lot of privacy, so we tend to hold our breath, not make sound. We don't want people to know what's going on. It's just totally normal, I get it. But what we're also training our body to do there is hold our breath in moments of pleasure. And not only in sexual pleasure, but we're training the body like excitement and joy. We may try to grasp those moments, like hold our breath and like, oh, like hold on to it. When we do that, we tighten, we're creating that density where energy can't move through. It's muted by this density. So we want to learn to expand into that, right? Expand into sensation and pleasure. It's not all about sex or sexual pleasure. This is about heart pleasure, chills and excitement and joy and giggles, lightheartedness. And so learning how to tune back into this when we trained our body for so long to be resistant and repressed and kind of hesitant about it can feel uncomfortable. So if it starts light, totally cool. Eventually we want to kind of move it into a inhale, filling up that reservoir, and exhale, moving that texture and sound through the body to massage those inner folds. Actually, our esophageal folds, like I said, our top and our base are connected. They're mirroring each other from the center. Our esophageal folds look like labial folds. It's just soft tissue. This is what soft tissue looks like when it's creating form. So using that sound and texture to massage these connected pathways, remove these micro tensions that we're not conscious of. Helps to start to release from the inner. And like a tree, and you see its rings move outward, that's how we form. Our inner starts to move outward, becomes our exterior. So we can start to soften from the inside. Over time, it's going to become our outside. We're going to become that soft on the outside. A lot of times we don't see the progression of the benefits fast enough, so we give up, right? But it comes through. So it may start as just a that kind of thing to turn into. What I'm doing here is also engaging that ujjayi tool to help me regulate the breath a bit better. So constricting the back of the throat, really making, kind of exaggerating gravelly sound and texture. But using that pelvic floor to send it up through, like I'm squeezing that bowl and just moving the air through. I'm not forcing myself to make sound. This is just what the inside of my body sounds like. So you can use that as kind of like a sonogram to kind of give you a visual, like, oh, I might be tight here, or this sounds really gritty and like a balloon you squeeze it, that type of thing. There's a lot of tightness going on. Just be curious and inspect your body, get to know yourself. You can let it out the mouth. Over time, when this starts to soften and refine these tissues, you're going to get into the sound, what I call the panther breath. It sounds like this. And there's less restrictions and blockages, so the sound can move freely and flow and roll through the body. You'll feel this connected, and the tongue connects down the front panel of the body all the way to the genitals. You feel that roll and that ripple move through that panel, connecting these two areas of the body. Over time, in like a heated situation, say a vinyasa or making love or these really intense situations, you can also do it on the inhale. When the body's kind of cold, it's not quite as prepared for it. But that starts to create that purr, that healing purr of the body. Right? That's using that purr to heal themselves, move tension, shift it out of the body.
It's not on the first date.
Not on the first date. It's been not good today, okay. So maybe engaging that section 1, hips, heart, moving the sound out from the reservoir of the hips and that second reservoir of air in the chest. And that backup valve in the base. This really helps with singing. Most of the people I know who have heard of pelvic floor breathing or really experienced with it are vocal coaches. They understand the power of the diaphragm and the bass diaphragm as well. Contra does. tantric sex educator. I also teach, once you get the pelvic floor breathing down, then we can learn how to harness the life force energy, our chi energy, creating this field of fusion. The word orgasm is just a burst of energy. Most people associate it only to sexual situations and only experience it through the release valve of their sacrosexual chakra. But we're able to radiate orgasm through all of our chakras, and that's what we want to get into. When we can regulate the breath and we can allow the system to fully light up, right? A lot of us hold tension and blockages in our heart. We keep that opening, so we're only, we become reliant on that sexual sacral chakra, creating obsession, addiction, and dissatisfaction, right? When we start to move that energy all the way through, start to radiate through each chakra, full form. And then we start to radiate like a star, right? So there's so much impact that happens around the world. Bad things, negative traumas, blah, 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 just noise pollution or whatever, daily stresses start to impact us. When we can learn how to radiate from the body like a star, we're actually moving tension outwards and we're deflecting these impacts. We're starting to influence our environment more, receiving what we need. So pelvic floor breathing is kind of the start of where we can really go with our power. Just noticing the soft sounds of the breath moving through the body. With the ecstatic orgasm, I have video, I have a bunch of free videos online. I'll give you guys cards so you can check this stuff out. And eventually I'll do some workshops with this. There will be another classes eventually coming back with doing a pelvic floor breathing class, but oh right, so learning how to do this. So let's say I'm getting a deep tissue massage and I feel a lot of tension and sensation in an area. Instead of allowing that impact to further penetrate my system, I engage in my ecstatic orgasm, creating a shuttle through my entire body, moving that tension outward and clearing it from my body. So this is an idea of what does ecstatic orgasm do? It's not about sex. It doesn't, it will increase everything. So it is a benefit sexually, but it's not its main purpose. But it also kind of starts with starting to open up these subtle areas, getting the support of our foundation of our breath and all that. And so I'd like you just to choose, you kind of go through your mind of the different visualizations, the balloon between the hips, inflating that balloon, deflating that balloon on the exhale, lifting and zipping through that wetsuit of the inner body. Inhale, contracting the diaphragm, lengthening the inner lining of the body. Exhale, moving it up and out. Think about breathing into the balls or breathing into the flower as it unfolds into the light of the breath. Exhale, slowly closing down for rest and restoration. Think about the segmented breaths, breathing into the hips, heart. Exhaling, hips, heart. Remembering proprioceptive field, the roll beneath the body. Or maybe engaging in some sound. And we're going to do a quick sound bath while we're laying here. Let me feel a little more comfortable releasing the sound into sound. And playing with the different methods of adjusting to this breath. As the warmth of the exhales escapes the body. Bring attention to where your body's connecting to the floor, sensing the support of the ground. Notice the surface of the body, feeling the air, the periphery, the skin. Really beginning to soften the pores of the skin. And let the breath move through the perforation of the surface. Inhale, flowing to the soft, open pores. Exhale, softly escaping through the pores. Let the light of your breath shine through the pores of the skin, down to the tips of the toes and the fingers. And wiggling fingers and toes. The tongue within the mouth, and the eyes behind the lids. Allow the skull to rock gently side to side. Awakening the cervical spine. You bend the knees, place feet on the props of the ground, windshield wiper the feet, awakening the lumbar spine. Just take a few releases with breath and sigh. Inhale. Exhale audibly. With the texture of sound, removing your residual tension that may have risen to the surface. One more deep inhale. Nice. Maybe bending the knees in towards the chest, giving your knees a squeeze. Bring the nose in between the knees, stretch through the length of the neck, skull. Exhale, release, maybe rocking side to side. And rolling over to one side whenever you're ready. Or rock and roll seated if you'd like. So you can take a moment to come to your side, take a breath, feel that support once again beneath you, reinforce and reassure the body that it's safe and held. It's given space to exist. And is deserving of that space. As you're ready, gently assist ourselves up to a seated position. We're going to end the class with some ohms. When we express or vibrate om, we see om written a lot, O-M, it's totally fine. We want to think about sounding it out as A-U-M. Ah, we're going to resonate here in the skull, this open space of the skull, ooh here in the mouth and the throat, and the you're going to feel in the cavity of the chest, moving the sound vibration into the body, bring that formlessness into form. So just follow along with me. We'll take a few breaths. We're going to inhale, spread the palms down toward the earth, spread the chest, let the throat open to the sky. Inhale. Exhale, move that breath up and out, zip up through the body, create that structure, this piercing point of life. Inhale and open to the breath. Shoulder blades move down the back, open the throat. Exhale. Structure. Inhale, open. Soften and receive. Exhale, lift and send. Now as we inhale, we're going to draw the palms down as the chest spreads open and through the arms. And exhale. Let's rub the palms together here, creating some softness and sensitivity between the palms of the hands. Our hands are extensions of our heart, help us articulate and express in the world. We can place the palms together in front of the chest in Anjali Mudra. If you'd like to feel the vibrations within the body, you can place the palms on top of the chest, laying one palm on the chest and the other palm on top of the other. And we'll om 3 times. We'll first take an inhale and an exhale together. Then we'll inhale to vibrate. Om, inhale. Exhale fully. Inhale to Om. Inhale. Take a pause before we go into the next one. So inhaling, think about filling up that reservoir, that pump in the base. As we exhale, lifting the light of our breath out of the body. And also our mouth and the ahs kind of open and wide and loose as the ooh, we create this kind of ooh, circular kissy face motion. The lips seal that sound into the body. Let's do 2 more just for fun. Palms in front of the heart or on top of the heart. Inhale and exhale, start. Inhale for 2 more. Arms, inhale. Inhale. Deep breath in. Hold at the top of your inhale. Soften your frame. Allow another sip of breath in. Lengthen the spine. Exhale. Head bows to your heart. Thank yourself for taking the time to practice. Taking the time to release tension from the body. Each time we release tension from our body, we're releasing a measure of tension from the entire fabric of the world, making it a lighter and brighter space. Thank you so much for your practice. Sat Nam, Namaste. Oh, you are coming. Take your time to move. We've got like 4 minutes till 1:30, so I'm gonna do a little demo. I have a video on, just gonna give you guys an idea of the difference of the breath capacity between pelvic floor breathing and breath and belly breathing. So I'm gonna do a typical belly breath where I inhale into the belly, compress the spine, not engaging the pelvic floor, and moving the breath all the way out to see how much breath I'm typically getting. And this one I'm gonna do the pelvic floor breathing where I inhale all the way down and engage the pelvic floor to move all of the breath out, show you how much I got in. Belly breath. Pelvic floor. So this is the difference in oxygen that I'm working with, right? And with the belly breath, this is belly breath without pelvic floor engagement. So I'm not actually getting all the air out of my body. I'm gonna show you the difference to how much air I pull in and to how much I'm letting out. So there's a little bit of air that we're always leaving in the reservoir of the body if we're belly breathing and not compressing and moving, engaging that pelvic floor. We leave some breath in there that's getting stale, not allowing us to take a larger inhale on the next round. So just something to think about. There's a video on that as well. Kind of goes into the whole thing. And I teach here. I do sound baths here for the moment. I did have a pelvic floor breathing class where we're adjusting things for the Coyote yoga, which I love, so I'm happy to oblige. But it will be coming back eventually. But I do sound healing. Oh, I got this. Sound healing on Tuesdays 2 to 3, and Saturdays 4 to 5. Interesting. You're welcome. Good to see you. So I have 3 videos on here that go over everything pelvic floor breathing. I've got sound baths in there, different doses if you want. All my tantric sex education work. There's 3 videos on that as well. Yeah, I made a friend on there. I'd love to see all you guys and have any questions, please. Another video. Contact me for anything and stuff on there as well. You're so welcome. Yeah, I do like your doing How are you?
Good. You definitely can. I can tell you breathe more when you're like, oh, remember here.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause usually I'm like, and then I'm like,
Focus
okay,
on
there's
that.
nothing there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's,
Yeah, awesome.
but the squeezing at the end is definitely not too, like, I don't know.
It takes time. It takes some people time for tighten there, starting to
Thank you.
chip away. For me, like, I think the first week of it, I was like, I don't feel anything. Like, what is this supposed to be? You know what I mean? And I get so frustrated. Like, and it reminds me of that, like, drive. Have you ever learned to drive a standard car from, like, you used to
On
manual?
stick shift, no.
The stick shift, and there's that threshold, like, where you're always stalling out. You're like, oh, you're trying, you know, you almost got it. But then once you get